Shabbat evening, as he comes together with Sandy to almost every Shabbat service. And we were chatting, and from that chat came a history that I knew needed to be shared with all of us. It is the very first time that he will share this story with the congregation. As he shared it, let us all remember how fortunate and grateful we are to him for expressing his thoughts and sharing his emotions, but more importantly, for being the vibrant, committed Jew that he is, that still to this very day works side by side with Sandy to make sure that we as a Jewish community thrive and succeed, and that he is well enough and bold enough and brave enough to come forward and share this story. As I look around and see the young faces, I realize that they will not be as fortunate as you and I to hear the story directly. They will have to listen to tapes and DVDs and iPods and film. But as you will hear tonight, the spoken word represented by the person that embodies the story is unmatched and unequaled, as is the gentleman I introduce to you now, Erwin Gans.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Rabbi, for the opportunity to tell my story. I also want to thank my family and friends who are here tonight. This is a true story of a young Jewish boy growing up in Germany under Nazi rule from 1933 to 1939, including Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. 71 years ago, I was that young Jewish boy, and this is my story. I was born in Frankfurt in 1929. I'm going to provide you some background as to what was happening in Germany in the late 1920s and early 1930s, so that you will better understand how the Nazis came to power. Adolf Hitler ran for chancellor in 1928 and lost the election by a larger margin. Shortly after that election, Germany had unprecedented unemployment and high inflation. My father told me that he had to use a wheelbarrow filled with money to buy a loaf of bread. By the time he reached the bakery, he didn't have enough money. These were very difficult times, according to the stories my parents told me. Hitler came to power in 1932 as a direct result of massive unemployment and high inflation. And of course, he blamed the Jews for most of Germany's problems. As a result, in 1933, my father lost his job as a bank executive in Frankfurt because he was a Jew. Since my father could not get any work in Frankfurt, the family was forced to move to a small town, Bernkastel-Kues, located about 150 miles away on the Moselle River. My grandmother had a small department store there that sold women's, men's, and children's clothing. My father joined the business and moved our family into her home. We felt secure in this small bucolic town with beautiful vineyards lining both banks of the river. There was even a fairy tale-like castle high in the hill overlooking the Moselle. Most of the residents worked in the vineyards that produced Riesling wines. Both towns on either side of the river had no more than 30 Jewish families with one synagogue. You'll be able to see a poster in the back of the sanctuary after we finish the service. When I was 5 years old and ready for school, the local public school refused to enroll me because I was Jewish. Anti-Semitism was becoming rampant all over Germany due to Hitler's weekly radio tirades against the Jews. As a result, our security level was beginning to decline. My parents had no choice but to enroll me in a Jewish school near a synagogue in Wittlich, about 35 miles from home. Even though I was only 5 years old, I had to take a train to and from school every day by myself. I wore this train pass around my neck. This is the original train pass, my last train pass that my parents bought me, which I wore around my neck. I was 71 years old. It was not, in other words, the conductor knew of my destination because he saw my train pass. It was not easy for me. The brown-shirted Hitler Youth, used to wait for the Jewish children at the station in Wittlich. They harassed us, called us names, and on occasion stole our books. When the police was at the station, they stood by and did nothing. The school I attended was a one-room schoolhouse and had one teacher. I still remember his name, Professor Hartman. He taught only boys from the ages of 5 to 13. Every Friday afternoon, we went to the synagogue for Jewish studies. I was a student in this school until I was 8 years old in 1938. During this period, anti-Semitism was worsening, and Jewish men were taken from their homes and beaten on the streets. Signs were posted on Jewish-owned stores, including my grandmother's. They said, "Kaufen nicht von Juden," which translates, "Do not buy from Jews." Nazis were posted in front of the stores and kept a record of the people who entered. Of course, as a result, business declined. Every night before I went to sleep, my father kissed me goodnight. I remember one night that he talked extra long, longer than usual. The next morning, I asked my mother, "Where is Papa?" She said that he left in the middle of the night in order to escape the Nazis, who were already looking for him. My father left because my grandmother had the foresight to realize that we were all in danger, and that we had to get out of Germany. The question was where the family could relocate to. It was extremely difficult to immigrate to the United States, and at that time, every immigrant needed a sponsor. The sponsor was required to deposit funds into a bank account so that the immigrant would not be a burden to the state. My grandmother remembered that she had a second cousin who was living in Missouri, and she wrote to him to ask him to sponsor the family.